Well, we had that one uphill at the end. Remember, I said, Brock, do you think you can do that whole uphill without stopping and without whining?
No, you told me I had to do that.
No. And I'm thinking in my brain, I'm like, he looks a lot bigger than that to me. But I don't want to get overexcited,
And we try, to not get caught up in antlers and inches and things like that.
It's not good to be caught up in inches when you don't kill big stuff anyway.
I didn't see it. When it stood up, it just appeared right in front of me. I'm like, how did I not see?
But it was, in your defense, it was a good 8 or 9 or 10 yards away from you in the wide open.
That's what friends are for. So,
Hey! It's about to get crazy. It's about to go down. It's about to get crazy. It's gonna be loud. This is our house. We do what we wanna. We'll blow the roof up. Everybody's coming. It's about to get crazy. It's about to go down. It's about to go down.
When does hair and makeup come in?
Yeah, Dad, you could really use some.
I know. I could use some touch up.
us rugged men and gritty men, we don't.
You don't have hair and makeup here?
No, I don't I don't do that. I just go straight up grit and manliness.
Wow.
That's the goal.
You're better looking than I thought you were then. That was all makeup.
Can you hear me still?
Oh, you
Ooh,
sound
that's
like a movie star. Movie star. So, let's go. Ready?
All
right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. We are coming at you from the studio in Fruit Heights, Utah. And I am here with my friends since high school, since Cub Scouts.
Yeah.
Since
going back a long time.
Long way. Anthony Spencer. And for those of you who followed Gritty from the beginning, you've seen his film, probably. It's Not About the Horns.
Yeah.
With your dad. And if you haven't seen that, it was in the Full Draw film tour. It's the first film Gritty ever made.
Yeah.
And it's great flick about you and your dad, and super heartfelt, and his first bull elk with a bow at 67.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right here in the Wasatch.
Yeah, right here in the Wasatch. On our 17th day here. 17th and final day or something like that. It's the last day of the season.
Oh, such a grind that was, but great film. And then since then, you and Ben, cousin Ben, were in that recent film I put out from Hell's Canyon.
Yeah.
That was really awesome. And here we are with Brock Spencer, your youngest child.
Kid, youngest of 5.
Now growing into a young man. Brock, you are how old?
13.
13. He has a deep voice for a 13-year-old. Is it deeper than Brett's?
I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know.
They're both pretty deep.
Yeah.
And Brett is your older brother.
Yeah.
And Brock just shot a buck bigger than anything Brett has ever shot.
Yeah.
And we're not trying to rub it in or anything.
Just got to make sure.
Bigger than anything I've ever shot.
Or me I've ever shot. So we're going to get into this story. Brock shot a 191-inch buck in rough score.
Yeah.
Gross in in a western state.
Yeah.
It's a neat hunt, and I was up there with you, and we both shot elk on this hunt. So we just got back last night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very limited entry, very low hunter numbers. Not at all.
Yeah, it was the Orange Army
Yeah.
in mass. It's an interesting hunt because this is the elk portion is do-it-yourself, public land,
Over the counter. Spy tag.
Just go and buy your tag and go out, and it's good for almost most of the state.
Yeah.
And so it's a competitive hunt.
Yeah.
It's not easy to find a bull and kill a bull in that kind of area.
I'm just thinking, day before the season, we thought we were pretty cool and found a bull.
Mm-hmm. The night before, so we roll up the night before, and we get there, And there's quite a few camps and hunters everywhere we go. And we glass up a bull in a basin that we thought no one could see.
Well, last year, nobody would go up. We were the only ones up there. This is where Brock killed his bull last year.
Yeah. It's where Brock killed his first bull, which we had a video of that last year. We put out with you and Ben, and there's a little day-by-day series on YouTube from Gritty with that. And so this would be our second year. And when we saw that bull in the basin, I thought we were golden. I thought
that's our meadow. That's Brock's meadow. Yep. Nobody goes up there. Nobody's done.
Nobody can see into the meadow unless you're at this right angle looking at. And I saw a bull walk right across the opening for like 3 minutes and then be gone. And that was it. And I thought, we're golden. We show up the next day. We see 27 hunters.
27 hunters we counted.
Orange everywhere.
Surrounding base.
And it turns out everybody saw the same elk we did from the other side of the mountain range.
In fact, we saw one bull.
And they saw a herd.
Like 30. 30 elk up there.
And so they proceeded to shoot up the herd that next day.
Yeah, right at first light.
And we were late to the game. So that sets the stage for the public land over-the-counter kind of rifle hunt. But, what would you say you've learned, Anthony? Because we grew up hunting archery, and I remember years ago, in your, I don't know, early 30s, maybe late 20s, you're like, I just have no interest in shooting an animal with a gun.
Yeah.
You're like, right. It doesn't appeal to me.
Almost a little snobby about it back then.
Yeah.
But it just didn't appeal to me.
It just didn't. Desire. And now, this is, you've been on a fourth season rifle hunting?
What changed that for me, though, was moving to Idaho. Because in Idaho, your deer tag's just a deer tag. You hunt for the archery season with it. If you don't fill it, you can hunt in the rifle season. If you don't fill it, you can hunt in the late archery seasons. So it just opened the doors up for, you didn't have to choose that. And then I had kids that were starting to hunt, and they had different sports and stuff going on, and they couldn't make it archery hunting, but they could go during rifle. And that's what kind of opened the door for rifle hunting for me.
And you extended your season.
And then I found out it's every bit as fun as archery hunting. It's just a little easier to kill them. That might not be as exciting, but when we're out hunting, it's the same thing. We're doing the same things, and it's a blast.
I'm kind of curious because the evolution of why you go out and hunt.
Yeah,
has that changed?
Yeah. Well, again, when my kids, all that stuff you're talking about from before, I didn't have any kids that hunted. I had kids, but they were young, but then as the kids were growing up and each took their turn hunting, the girls were first. I had 3 girls first, and they would hunt with dad when it was cool to be with dad, and they were younger. And about 14, that kind of came to an end for all of them. And then the boys coming up, my last 2 are boys, and they were coming up and a little more interested in hunting, but they play so many sports. Football is real big for both of them, and they just play sports all year. It's hard to find times to go. So it opened the door for just more opportunity to go. And they just started killing things. I mean, they killed so much more than I ever killed. It wasn't even close. They've all killed. I was in my 30s before I had killed what these kids killed in their teens.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of that was because we were, we went to rifle seasons with a archery hunter's mentality, and we just, they started killing things.
And you feed your whole family on.
That's the other thing that really changed. We went from when I was more newlywed married and kids were young, we'd eat elk and deer. I wasn't nearly as successful back then. So it was like a novelty to have elk for dinner. Mm-hmm. And as the years went on, it's a novelty to not have elk or deer for dinner.
Yeah.
That's like a once a week thing. We'll have pork or something we bought.
You guys, seriously, you go out and you harvest elk and deer every year during those rifle seasons.
We live on it all year.
You live on it.
All year.
It's
I would say it's 5 or 6 nights out of every week of the year is game meat. So that was huge, dude, and that was great. I got all these kids that would get tags and rifle hunt, and I could go enjoy archery season and never kill anything. Mm-hmm. They would fill the freezer.
And they'd fill the freezer. The practical side of things.
The practical side.
So when did hunting with a rifle become fun?
Right away when we moved to Idaho, number one, we had some really good elk hunts. really good rifle elk hunts. I met a guy, older gentleman, who was just hardcore. I mean, up until about 2 years ago, this guy's in his 70s. When I met him, he was retired, and he took me out rifle hunting when I started coaching football, and archery hunting became a little tough. And this guy, up until about 2 years ago, would stop and wait for me to catch up. Here he is in his late 60s, retired. Doesn't work out. Yeah. Just tough. He's been a hard worker his whole life. Just tough guy. Rod Hepper's his name, and still hunt with him to this day. But anyway, he started taking me out, and he'd been killing bulls by himself 10, 12 miles in, for years. And so we started having these really cool rifle hunts, and it became fun. And then we went to Colorado. Well, actually, cousin Ben and I went to Colorado 4 years ago. It was our first time trying to rifle hunt out of state, and just wanted to target mule deer. And we killed a nice buck in Colorado. Almost killed a buck like Brock's that hunt, our first hunt. That was a little private property posting mishap. Somebody had some public land posted like it was private, so we didn't shoot these giant bucks we found. Found out the next morning it was illegally posted, and we could have shot them. But anyway, that just, especially for mule deer, that really unlocked the door for rifle hunting mule deer, which has just been a lot of fun.
Yeah, so. I was thinking about it on the way home. The actual finding once you see an animal when you're rifle hunting, once you see it, you have pretty good odds of actually harvesting the animal. Yeah. But finding the animal, finding the animal is not that easy during that season, especially when it's an over-the-counter, do-it-yourself kind of thing, or even if it's a easy draw, limited entry. Right. They give away a lot of tags. There's a lot of pressure, and those animals go to ground. Yeah. And it's cold. It's cold. Like, I'm not grinding with a bow with frozen toes and the whipping wind. It's a whole different struggle that time of year. And you could bow hunt. You could opt to bow hunt during that time of year instead of use your rifle on some states.
Well, speaking of that hunt with Ben, the first time we went to Colorado with Ben, my plan was to bow hunt. In fact, if you probably don't remember this, you drew that tag with me and had to turn it back in, I believe, because Suzanne was sick. Was that the same year? Yep. And had to turn yours back in. And we planned on bow hunting. And then I remember Aaron Snyder told us we were crazy for thinking about bow hunting during a third season in Colorado. And this was, I was looking at Aaron like he's as hardcore archery hunter as they get. And Aaron's saying we're crazy for thinking. I didn't even bring the bow on that hunt.
Yeah. And the reality is, we talked about this. I was sitting there this year, a week ago, and I was like, we were in camp and we were talking about shooting and distance that I can shoot effectively and, kind of talk. And I'm like, dude, Anthony, look, if we see a buck at 800 yards, there's no reason why I can't close to 2. I mean, if I can get to 20 on a deer spot and stock with a bow, I can get to 200 with a rifle. And you're like,
there was a problem with that philosophy.
Yeah, there's a problem. There's a hole in my game. And that was, you're like, oh, that's great, Brian. Except for some other guy in the Orange Army is going to shoot it from 1,200 yards.
Or 5 other guys.
Or 500, or 5 other guys before you even get there.
Right.
And it dawned on me
you don't have that kind of time over there. It's too many people.
You see an animal and it just might get shot by someone else before you get to shoot it.
Which happened to us last year with Brett in Colorado. Yeah. We were on a big buck, about a 175 buck. I mean, it was a big buck for us. Yeah. And it was towards the end of the hunt, and it was, about 800 yards. Brock was there. And we were just watching, trying to figure out what he was going to do, where we're going to put a stock on, And these kids now, since then, they've shot out to those kind of ranges just because of what happened. As we're watching this buck, and we had seen these 3 guys on a knob. I measured it on Google Earth later. It was 1,100 yards. They killed that buck as we were trying to make our.
So you're 600.
Plan. Yeah,
they're 11. You're like, we got this.
Yeah, and actually we met the camp this year while we were up there. We met the camp that shot that, and they confirmed it. I think they said it was 1,089 yards. I had measured it 1,100 on Google Earth, so it was just about spot on. Anyway, they killed that buck, shot it out from under us. So, and we'd been shooting out to 300-400 yards last year, maybe 5. And this year we upped that a little bit.
Yeah.
Didn't need it, thank goodness. I don't want to shoot that far. Don't like shooting it.
It's an interesting topic because,
yeah.
you know, you hear a lot of people coming out on the long range.
Yeah.
When do you stop hunting and it's just shooting
Right.
and that kind of thing? And you get the same thing with archery talk as well. You know, is it really a hunt if you shot it at 90 yards versus 20 yards? And then the same argument, you know, 300 with a rifle or 1,000.
Right.
Like, did you really hunt?
Well, I know guys that have hunted their whole lives and are very successful, and they'd never shoot to 300. They think that's crazy yardage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where little kids are shooting that far easily. Here's the thing. I don't mind anybody's take on that, but I want my kids interested in hunting. I want them to be successful. And as long as we can ethically do that, I don't care how they enjoy it. I'd rather get them hooked on hunting and they can figure that out on their own after they enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know? And so, well, don't get me wrong. They do have to practice. They have to show that they can hit at these ranges. And again,
these are skilled, confirmed ranges.
Yeah. And this is, for us, that's, 6, 7, I think Brock shot out to 690 this year.
Yeah.
And was drilling, just hammering every time. Now, those are perfect conditions. You know, you got all the time in the world.
I shot better from there than I did at 300.
Yeah, he actually did. It was crazy. He couldn't keep a good group at 300, but at 690, just with single shots, he's drilling the center of this gong every time.
Really?
Yeah, it's crazy.
The modern equipment is on another level too.
Yeah.
And so you get into that philosophical, discussion about what constitutes a hunt. And for my part, I just feel like it's personal.
Yeah.
If
it is personal.
It's personal. But you have to weigh accept your decisions.
Yeah.
Right? Own the consequences of your actions and to choose to shoot only at 250 yards or less, right? You're going to limit yourself and probably miss out on a lot of opportunities.
Right.
A guy that says, I'm going to shoot 2,000 yards and then wound stuff, there's consequences both ways. But let's talk about the foot race we had for the elk that Brock and I shot.
Yeah, that was funny. That's classic.
And so
Colorado. I shouldn't blame it on Colorado. It's classic, like a ton of hunters and public land,
over-the-counter stuff.
Over the counter, high pressure.
Not joking. 27 hunters that we saw in a limited space that we were all hunting the same valley,
Same, we could all glass each other.
Yes.
And in fact, we met Jim.
Yep.
Nice guy. Heck of a good guy.
Awesome,
we really enjoyed
dude.
him. Hunted with us from before daylight till after dark.
Yep.
Because we had the same plan.
Yep. we get to the trailhead where we're spiking out after that bull elk that we saw day before opening day. And we start making our way up. Well, he drives up and parks. And so
we were just getting just getting our stuff ready to go.
And your philosophy is let's talk to each person and see where they're going and see if we can work together or avoid each other.
All day, instead of just racing and
so it works well. So you went up and you talked to Jim and you're like, so what's your plan? He's like, we're going to go blah, 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 over here. And he goes, we're like, that's our exact same plan. And so we actually ended up just hunting together.
We hunted together all day.
He
was a good guy. We had a good time.
Oh, I had a blast.
He all day.
He could talk crap.
Well, Brian and I, we've heard each other's stories 1,000 times. We got new stories to listen to.
That's right.
So we sat on one knob all day.
Yeah. So when we get up there, so that's the situation, and so we're out there glassing, and this is day 3 of the hunt. Our second day, we took so
we hunted Saturday.
Sunday was a rest day.
Sunday we took off.
And then Monday's our third day. Yeah. Glassed all day. It's about an hour before dark.
Yeah.
And we see 2 bulls.
Yeah, you spotted 2 bulls. We hadn't seen an elk all day. We hadn't seen an elk since the day before opening day.
Yep. And, we see in this area is mix of private and public land all over the place. Yeah. So the animals just crisscross through public, private, and these animals came across a private property from a private property area. One bull was on the private, right. One bull was on the public.
That's right. They were right each side of the fence.
Mm-hmm. So we sat there and we were like, okay, let's make a game plan. And we watched them and they were moving further and further into public.
Yeah, the one bull crossed into public and then they were feeding towards us, but they're 1,200 yards away.
Yep. At this point, Brock and I both have elk tags, and we're thinking we could get a double. Right? I mean, let's go for the gold. One's a 6x6, one's a 5x5. Both are broken.
Yeah.
A little bit. But
both are similar size bulls.
Yeah. Great bulls, especially when my freezer's empty of elk. I've got a little moose and a little bit of
we knew we were
deer.
giving you first dibs because you helped us pack Brock's bull out last year.
Yeah.
Just helped along.
But to get 2 would be a major score. So we know we've got about an hour, and they're 1,200 yards away, and we want to close to as close as we can get.
Yeah, as close as we can get. Yeah.
So we pack up our stuff, just throw it in our packs, and we start hot-footing it down.
Yeah, we bailed off the backside.
And we start walking the base of the mountain over to where the elk are. Well, we're about 400 yards into this walk.
They were at 12
yards.
And we got to 6 when that happened.
And I look up on the hill, and there is a dude running to beat us to these 2 bulls.
Yeah.
And what's ironic, though, and I'm like, Anthony, dude, that guy's racing us. And I look up, and he is like hustling to get ahead of us. And I'm looking at the terrain, and he doesn't know what we're running.
There's no way, because he's looking through an aspen patch, and they're on the edge, our side of the aspen. There's no way he can see that there's animals there.
All he knows is we are running to
We're stuck.
that spot, so he's like running. And if he gets to the ridge and peeks over before we do, he could shoot him.
And he's kind of got the advantage because we're at the base of the hill where it's bigger. He's up
high,
400 yards above us.
Yep.
Got a little smaller radius to go around.
So if those bulls were one draw closer, he'd have beat us there and shot him.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what's irritating about that is, I mean, he didn't know what was there. No. He just saw other hunters were onto something and was going to try to beat us to it. I can't believe that. It's like, where's your class?
Yeah. It's one thing if he had spotted him, we had spotted him, he wants to race. Hey, so be it. That's public land. That's the way it goes. He couldn't see him.
That's the thing is he was going in blind. That's cold.
That's cold.
So that forces us to step up.
We had to pick up our pace.
We had to pick up our pace because you couldn't tell if maybe he could get on a point and get a shot, or if they fed out into the open.
Yeah.
Out of those aspens, then he'd have a shot. So unfortunately that made us, we were like, we got all the time. We can take our time. We can set Brock up. We can set me up. We can be all calm. But that's not what happened. So, Brock, from your perspective, what exactly happened from that point?
Well, we were going, and then my dad went too high and got spotted by one of the elk.
I did. I kind of almost figured it up for us.
So we had to shoot from where we were. And
which we got it down to 300, right? It was right at 300.
Yeah, it was 300 yards.
300 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so Brian shot the one on the right, I think.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I shot the one on the left, and I could only see part of mine. But at first I couldn't see mine because I was looking in the wrong spot.
Yeah, Brock kept looking up towards the fence line at the top of the hill, thinking they'd come down about 150.
But you settled, and
well, we learned something, right? I said, Brock, you always got to find the animal with your eyeballs first. Yeah, he was just looking through the scope, scanning the hillside.
Because you bobbed your head up to see where they were at, watching the guy on the ridge just above us, and that forced us kind of to be more aggressive.
Yeah, I stepped out to look between a hole and a dead snag, and one of the bulls caught my movement. Didn't know what I was,
which is surprising because 300 yards is still pretty far.
Yeah.
And I mean, you had a lot of brush in the background and you're camoed out, but somehow, I mean, he pinned you.
He pinned my movement. I mean, they stood there for what? How long did it take us to get ready to shoot?
5 minutes.
5 minutes. So
that
he wasn't bolting.
Me. Which, by the way, we're sitting there and it pins Anthony and he's looking, and they start to spook. And so they start shifting and they look like they're going to go.
One of them did. The other one was clueless, but yeah.
It looked like they were going to ditch us.
Looked like the one was going to head back in the timber.
Yep. So you're sitting there and I'm thinking there's no shot angle here. There's trees and junk in the way, and you're looking, you're like, this we gotta shoot. So that's when you're like, you know what? I think if you lay prone here on my left and Brock lays prone on my right.
But you shoot the opposite
But
side.
you shoot
bulls.
opposite
I
side.
think you got a window.
I think you
It's
got
like
windows.
Motion for you guys to crawl. You guys were just a few yards behind me when I got pegged.
Yep.
So you guys crawled out there, and you got set up in about 20 seconds.
Yeah, I was ready. I put the crosshairs right on the bull, and I'm like, okay, I can shoot.
And
Brock-
your bull was the one getting ready to step into the timber.
Yeah.
The other one was out in the open.
So I'm like, I'm ready to shoot. It's just killing me. I talked to Ben about it last night.
Did you?
He's like, oh, I'd have shot.
Most guys would have. You kept saying, I got to shoot. I got to shoot. I'm like, just wait.
Yeah. I wanted Brock to get his opportunity, you know. I mean, you get greedy and you could come home with nothing.
Yeah.
You know.
One's better than nothing.
One's better than nothing, but if you get two, you gamble, you can win big. So we settled but yeah, Brock couldn't find the elk, and I'm like, after a while you're like,
did you say that or did I? Do you see it with your eyes? He was like, oh no, I've been looking through my scope.
Yeah. So Brock hadn't actually seen him with his eyes.
Yeah.
And so, but he was trying to settle with the scope, and yeah, you need to spot him with your eyes first.
Good lesson, huh, bud?
Yeah. And then we both got him, and I'm like, can I shoot? And so Brock was on him. We're like, okay, we're all locked. And it was like, okay, anytime you're ready, just shoot.
That took you about a half second. Dude, boom. Anytime you guys are ready to shoot, boom.
Well, we have the GoPro set up in front. We're filming this whole thing. It was just on your trekking pole, and you just chucked it in front.
It on the bushes, yeah.
And it's filming Brock and I. We're shooting. Our rifles are pointed at the GoPro. And it's pretty cool little footage there. And you can see I'm locked on the bull the whole time, just waiting and waiting. And I'm tapping you on the knee going, I got to shoot, you know. And then finally he said, good. And so we shot, and we ended up, I shot my bull. It looked like, well, after I hit it right behind the shoulder, it stepped in front of Brock's bull.
Spun on 180. And stepped right in front of Brock's bull. Just as I knew Brock had to have been close to squeezing his trigger off.
Yep.
Which was true.
And it looked like Brock hit my bull just as it stepped in front of his bull. Yeah. They kind of run to the left, and my bull's looking sick.
In the open. Yeah. Your bull was hit hard. I could see that right away.
So I put one more bullet in him, shot him, and I saw him go down like, whoa, and I'm like, okay, he's going to fall over. And he looked like he's just going to go down right there.
I could
kind
see
of
blood
wobbly.
spot right behind his shoulder. Mid-body right behind his shoulder.
And then Brock's bull drops out of sight, shoots it.
Because, Brock, that was his
third
shot. Yeah.
Third shot. So his first shot hit your bull.
Yeah.
And then they cleared. And then I said, Brock, you just shot Brian's. And I knew you'd already killed him because I could see that blood spot behind his shoulder. So Brock shot again, and we heard a whop. We were pretty sure he hit him. And then I said, shoot him again. He's still up. And he shot him again, and then he just drops like a rock. Yeah. And that's about when you get your.
So then then for some reason, Brock's bull gets up, runs into the trees.
Yeah, after dropping.
We thought he was down, but he got up miraculously and ran into the trees. My bull, when he saw that his buddy like run, he decided to.
He got up and found a little reserve. And
I just led him best I could, and I shot him one more time as he was ditching in the trees, and
we heard smack.
I knew I hit him. We were like, okay, we're relatively sure we got both bulls, you know, and good hits. I was shooting a 7 mag, Christensen Arms 7 mag, and Brock's got a 270 Weatherby.
It's a Weatherby rifle, 270 Winchester round, but
so we go up there, and my bull's 20 yards into the tree line. It just died. It didn't go anywhere. And it's dark. It's getting dark. It's
right at last
dark.
light we had to find your bull.
And then we're like, okay, we gotta see if we're not sure how well Brock's bull got hit.
Yeah.
Because we knew it dropped, but it was like, okay, did it hit the back end, or was it, where did it hit exactly?
His back end didn't work real good when he first got up, but then he gained his feet and looked just fine.
And you looked, and basically you found a trail of blood.
Yeah, with a bed, just about 20 yards farther than yours.
And then you went and looked a little further, and it's like, okay, 30, 50 yards around us, and he wasn't there. Yeah. So we knew we needed to maybe give him some time, come back in the morning. If we get there early enough, the meat won't spoil.
Right.
So We process my bull and pack it out that night.
Half of it anyway.
Half of it. Leave the antlers and leave a couple quarters back there. We head back the next morning. And the whole time we're glassing the basins in the morning.
Yeah.
So even though we're going in to get elk, it's frozen. You know, the meat's frozen. But we're getting in there to see Brock's bull. Get on his blood. We get my bull. See that no bears or anything have taken it. And we start heading up the hill. And basically, we get to the private property fence.
Yeah, the bull pretty much zigzagged his way right up to the fence.
And you measured it later, and it was about 150 to 200 yards, something like that.
His trail was probably 200, but it was 150 line of sight.
Line of sight. But probably 200 yards of walking travel. And so we can...
It's straight up.
It's straight up, yeah. Steep. It's steep. Yeah. And so what were you thinking as we were getting closer and closer? And
I knew that bull was going. You know, that's the private land's like a sanctuary for them over there. They get hunted on the private, but not
not 27 hunters.
No, not a fraction of what they get in the public. So I knew as soon as that trail turned up the hill, I'm like, oh, we're in trouble. You know, in Colorado, like a lot of states, you can't go retrieve game without permission on private. You have to just, the landowner doesn't let you, you got to walk away, which feels so wrong. You know, you're following the law, but it feels so wrong. You know, and sure enough, we went up the fence and up and over the fence it went. But right there at the fence, we both, independent of one another, because we were a little ways apart, could smell elk, and not just smell elk, but smell gut shot elk.
Yeah.
So it smelled like.
Yeah, we had, I immediately, I'm like, I turned to you and I'm like, I smell it. I smell the bull. I smell elk, but then I also smell like.
Little gut smell.
Yeah, little gut smell. So I'm like, I'm like, he's got to be right there.
Yeah.
You know, he just went, my theory, he just went right over the fence.
Yeah.
So we split up along the fence line and I spot the bull. He gets up. He's kind of sick. And then.
No, you didn't just spot the bull. He gets up. You might have said that out of order. You might as well come clean.
We don't need all of it.
The bull got up and then you spot the bull.
Yes.
That's better order,
yes,
right?
Yes. So the thing is.
How far away was he?
Look, I made up for it when I spotted the tine later. I should have seen the bull. It was in plain sight. I should have seen it, and I didn't see it. When it stood up, it just appeared right in front of me. I'm like, how did I not see?
But it was, I mean, in your defense, it was a good 8 or 9 or 10 yards away from you in the wide open.
That's what friends are for. So, I see him though, when he stands up, it's got this gutty sound and like air coming out of his, he looked really hurt and
you didn't even think that sound came from his mouth, huh?
Yeah, I didn't think so. I thought I could hear gurgling. And he trots just a little bit and he stands there. He doesn't really even look at me. He just stands there away from me. Like and you could tell he didn't want to move. He let me walk real close.
When we'd only split up.
Yep.
60 seconds before that or
so I back
3 minutes.
I back out and I'm like, Anthony, the bull he's right there.
Yeah.
He's right there. So this is a question that I have. Like, this is an ethical dilemma.
Yeah.
I was thinking, what came to mind was this story, and I've got this. I'm going to read this. Okay.
All right.
And this is a book written by Stephen Ranella, Meat Eater, Adventures of a Meat Eater, right?
I read that. Yeah.
And he talks about this kind of situation a little bit, and it's always I get twisted up about these kind of things. So he's talking about hunting. This hunt he's on. He says. He's hunting geese and deer and stuff, and he's walking along. He says, as I watched the geese, a flash of movement in the thicket of willows caught my eye. Suddenly, I saw a mule deer fawn struggle to its feet. It made it only a few steps before it tipped over. We beached the canoe and found the scabbed and emaciated fawn in a thicket of willows. What had probably happened was obvious. Coyotes had gotten hold of the fawn, and somehow it had escaped into the water and either swam out to this island or washed down to it. The tracks in the mud suggested that a larger deer, presumably the fawn's mother, had hung around for a while before taking off. You could hardly blame the doe for giving up. The fawn was missing a good-sized bite from its right back leg, and its left leg was mostly hamstrung. I waved Matt's canoe over to the bank, and we discussed the situation. It seemed that the best course of action was to put the fawn out of its misery and strip off its measly bit of usable flesh to eat that night. But legally, one of us would then be obligated to apply his only deer permit to a half-starved fawn that had lost some of its best meat to a coyote.
Oh, wow.
It was one of those situations where civil and moral law collide. And while the anonymity of the backcountry usually allows you to choose moral law, none of us was willing to risk the punishment of having our hunting licenses revoked. So we left the fawn to its painful death. So we're standing at the fence line.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, like, I want to just shoot the bull over the fence line.
We have this same discussion basically right there on the fence. This
And-
moral versus
You know he's suffering. He's not going to die. He's going to die.
he's gonna die.
You could just tell from the way he looked. And already he'd suffered all night.
Yeah.
And it's probably only going to get worse in the next hours. And we could kill him
Yeah, he's right there.
right there.
You thought he was 50 yards across the fence. Later on, it was only like 35 yards or something.
And you're like, Brian, we can't break the law.
Yeah.
We can't trespass. And I'm like, we only need to shoot him. We can go get permission later. And you're like, and I'm just being honest.
Yeah, I know. No, it's
Like-
a good, honest discussion.
I have a hard time, leaving that animal out there
Yeah.
and letting him just suffer. And because there's that boundary. But at the same time, I understand that it is illegal to cross and it is illegal to go over there and kill an animal.
Yeah. And the landowner can just tell you no. You can't go get it. Like, he has that prerogative to deny us access. It's not illegal for him to deny access to retrieve game.
So we have this discussion. So Brock's privy to the whole thing, and we're sitting there having that talk. And I even make a comment like, "What if the landowner says no, you can't go get the game?" And you're like, "Then we're done."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "That just seems wrong to me."
Yeah,
And-
it does.
And you're like, "But you know what? I'd rather trust the system and go do it." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't trust the system. I don't like the system." And I'll admit it, I'm not someone who likes authority
Yeah.
that much, and I sometimes struggle with anyone telling me what to do.
Yeah.
But you're like, "No, it's the right thing to do. We need to just back out and get permission and come back."
Yeah.
And so, reluctantly, we went and got my bull. I packed it. We
Packed it
packed
out.
the rest of that bull out, and we got into town and made some phone calls.
Yeah, we started calling everybody. It's hard to get a hold of him, but I eventually tracked down the landowner, or at least the guy who leases the land.
Mm-hmm.
And he read me the riot act. He was not happy.
And
I see his perspective. I mean, he's running a business, and that's his livelihood. And I don't know. I've had some thoughts about it since then. At the time, my approach to him, I was hat in hand. It wasn't the time to get in an argument about who's right or wrong. We just told him we did our best to let those elk get as far from the fence line as we could. I really think not that I'm blaming this on some random stranger, but if he hadn't have been racing us to this unknown target that he had no clue what we were going to, we wouldn't have been as rushed. Those elk could have been another 100 yards closer. I mean, who knows? They were feeding right down the hill to us.
And you made the comment right off the bat. I hope they're like, we're not going to shoot if they're too close to the private property line. I'm like, they're on public.
Yeah, I
we
know.
can shoot them.
And you can. You absolutely can. It's
But
legal.
you're right. If they cross the fence, you can't get them.
Yeah.
If the land, you're now putting the control in someone else's hands.
Right.
And so you're from your perspective, you're like, we need them to feed away from the private, or we're not shooting. And then sure enough, they did. They just they were moving down too, or at least further
Yeah.
around. And I thought, I'm sure we could have shot him further, but even so, the shot Brock made, and he hit it in the chest cavity, and he hit it behind in the guts. We're not sure why the chest cavity shot didn't
do much damage.
Didn't do enough
low
damage.
in the armpit, and it just didn't do much damage. It didn't put him down. I don't know why.
So
it wasn't a bad shot placement, but it just must have just missed the vitals, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like it should have hit both lungs.
Yeah, it was low in the armpit, behind the shoulder.
And somehow, and it was angled uphill, so it just seems like where that entry hole was, it should have done more, but we weren't sure if maybe it was the bullet after it went through my bull.
It could have been. That was one possible.
Yep. Not sure. We'll never know.
We'll never know, no.
But it came down to this dilemma, and I don't know, like, it's funny, I did a podcast recently about telling the truth and being honest, you know? And then I'm sitting here going, ethically, morally, we need to kill it and end its misery and
put it to use.
And it's I'm juxtaposed between these two things where, like he said, the civil law and moral kind of collide. And so in hindsight, I'm really glad that we backed out and got permission.
Yeah, so he gave it to us. He made it hard on me. You know, he read me the riot act. Well, he was real quiet at first, just let me explain. And he just said, look, I can't have everybody thinking they can just freely do this every year and go find them. And I kind of understand his position. There's a part of me that also thinks, why do you care? Animals are shot on our side. They're shot on your side. Like, I don't know. I mean, I can see both sides is all I'm saying.
I understand that the private land, he's got a business to run, and these hunts that are part of the outfit, that he's got to feed the family, and he provides a service, an outfitted, guided hunt kind of experience, and that those animals represent nature and conservation and all that. I think he's very dedicated to that, but at the same time, he has a business to run. But I feel like those animals, like a landowner owns the land those animals live on.
Yeah.
And they're selling access to that land. But the landowner does not own the animal itself. The animal belongs to all the people in that state. Mm-hmm. They're owned by the state. So those elk are ours just as much as they are the landowners.
And that's one of the downsides that, and don't get me wrong, I've thought my whole life about becoming an outfitter, and I probably will someday. So I see that side of it. But one of the downsides is you start looking at animals as a dollar figure. You know, I've seen it happen so many times. Good outfitters, I'm not bad-mouthing them, but when you make your living based on those animals, it's hard not to just look at an animal like it's a dollar figure.
Especially when you sell a hunt for $8,000 and then you sell a trophy fee for another $8,000.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so when you shoot something that's, the bigger it is, the more I think, you know, a guy can conflate the issue and think, you know, mix up the dollars with what was shot. Like, the question is, like, how big is the bull? You know, how big was it? Because there's a dollar sign.
Yeah.
Did you shoot like a little bull, or did you shoot one of my $10,000 bulls?
Right. Did you shoot one of my $10,000 bulls, or did you shoot my $10,000 bulls that I had planned for 4 years from now?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Well, it's interesting because we actually had a discussion with the game warden after all this.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned to the game warden, why is this is an issue everywhere as far as shooting an animal on public land, but it crosses onto private. Most states don't allow you to go get it without permission, right?
Right.
But in a lot of areas, it's not a big deal. It's not like a known problem where the landowners are mad and upset. And the game warden pointed out, it's, you know, in his area, it's heavily outfitted. They're extremely high dollar hunts, and it's an issue there. Maybe back in Oregon, where there's not a lot of outfitting going on in the private, they're just ranchers and farmers, and they're like, yeah, go get it. I don't care. because they don't look at that animal with a dollar figure attached to it, and he pointed out that difference because I said, why is it not a big deal in where I'm at in Eastern Oregon or something? Why is that not a big problem? Because he basically made the comment to us that the landowner had said ours was the 6th phone call he got during this season. And he said ours was the one that broke the straw that broke the camel's back. He was not going to allow another hunter to do that. And I said, why? Why is it such a big deal here and not, say, in Eastern Oregon where I'm from, or Idaho? And he's like, well, how heavily outfitted is your area? And I said, well, not very. He's like, well, that's why. It's because these guys are getting huge money for these hunts. To them, it's a lot bigger deal. And so these same animals that die, say that bull made it to that fence and dropped. It's the same bull, the same death. It's one less bull in the herd, right? Mm-hmm. Nothing changed other than 30 yards of across the property, and that is enough to make him just furious and possibly in the future deny access to somebody who had that happen. It's just strange. It's a really strange.
To me, though, that's where I think it's messed up because you get to a point where you feel possessive of the animal instead of possessive of the land. And so what happens is you're like, okay, I own this land and you can come on it and you can use the land and whatever it's on it, you can shoot. When it crosses over and it's on the public, that animal isn't yours. And so when someone shoots it, they followed the law. They legally harvested it on the land they have access to. And that animal is owned by both of us, right? So once he shoots it, to me, it's his. That's how the law works, right? You have a tag, you shoot it, it now becomes not part of the community. Yeah,
you've reduced it,
you've reduced it to your possession. Yeah. And so when it runs and crosses the fence, I feel like you're just requesting access to go onto the land to get what you now possess, right?
And I believe there are states that allow that.
There are wanton waste laws and other.
Yeah, that allow you to retrieve game. I think most states don't allow because they don't want to infringe on property ownership. But.
And I totally am for that myself. Like I'm all about private property and public, but I feel like you should have to have permission. That ultimately it should be the landowner's decision whether you can come on that land or not. Yeah. At the same time, I'm disappointed if the landowner doesn't allow someone to go and retrieve that animal. Right. And one of the statements, I was having this conversation with somebody yesterday and they were like, well, how does the landowner know that somebody doesn't come along and shoot that animal 30 yards over the line and then say, I shot it on private or on public and it crossed. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, well, that comes down to a stance on humanity, what you think about people and their basic honesty or lack thereof, because if I own the land, I'd like to believe that I would rather err on the side of believing that someone's telling the truth than deny access to everyone on the possibility that one person might lie about it.
Right.
And at the end of the day, you're talking about a boundary that to me is like, that's 30 yards. Yeah. Like, why get hung up on it?
Right. And the thing is, like, the game warden, who's a good guy, I've talked to him over the last 4 years many times.
Very helpful.
Right. Very helpful. Very good guy. He made, when he asked for the details of this after the fact, because the landowner contacted him and just told him what happened. Well, he told him that was the straw that broke the camel's back, and I'm not letting anybody. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so when I asked the game warden, I said, did we do something wrong? And he's like, legally, absolutely not. Absolutely not. He goes, now, you guys letting that animal get 150 yards? He goes, I would have rather seen it at 500. And I see why he's saying that. Like, there's a practical side to that advice. He's just saying it avoids problems. So I get it. I'm not saying he's wrong. But as I left that conversation with him and I was driving home, I had the thought, wow, this landowner's got tens of thousands. I mean, it's a huge property, tens of thousands of acres. And you're going to give him an extra quarter-mile buffer all the way around? Like, how many more acres is that? A lot, right? I mean, you're talking about a gigantic boundary, linear boundary that you're going to add an extra quarter mile to. And as I got home again, I'm not blaming the game warden for that opinion. There's practicality to it. it avoids problems. But man, that's tight. He's got so much land tied up, which is great. I have no problem with that. They've got the money to have that land. Great. Good for them. That's America for you. But to give them another quarter-mile stretch around that's huge. That's huge. That's our land.
Yes.
So that didn't sit well with me as far as I thought we made a good effort to let those bulls do it, to try to avoid a problem. And I told him, I said, Brock's been practicing a lot on his shooting. He's a good shot, but he's 13. He's excited. I can't even tell you. Oh, man, the shots I took when I was 13 that I could have hit all day on a target and, flinging arrows. My quiver's empty. Go out there and find them, son. I mean, it's tough when you're 13. We do our due diligence and practice and work on it, but you don't have that mastered. I don't have it mastered yet.
That on that day by day series that I published during the open season was the last set of films that I put out. Brock goes out and shoots his first bull. Yeah. And it's one of my favorite little day by day series because I'm with you and Ben, and the camaraderie and brotherhood is strong, and we're here with these young men going out and hunting, and Brock hits a bull. Again, like he can make this shot all day long on targets. Now we have a live animal. You're 12 years old, right? Last year. And you hit the bull a little back. 2 shots in a row, exact same spot. and then the bull, and I wasn't sure we weren't sure if it was the rifle or the shooter or what. And but nevertheless, the bull ran into the timber, and it was dark. And so we came back the next morning, and he was
dead right there. Yeah.
And we showed what it was, and on the YouTube video, most of the people that left comments were like, good for you. It's great to see a father and a son getting out there. And there was the select few, like 3% or so, that basically said it was terribly unethical to let him shoot that bull if he can't hit it. And from my perspective, I'm like, it's a real thing when you're nervous, when you're aiming at a live animal. This is life and death. This isn't the same as shooting a target.
Right.
How do you become efficient at killing?
Yeah.
You have to kill.
Yeah.
There's experience.
At anything. Like, how do you become efficient at anything? Proficient. You got to go through it, right? I mean, you can practice it all you want.
And especially if it's something where the stakes are high.
Right.
Like a military or police or, firemen, like there's where, you got to pull this off or there's dire consequences. When the stakes are higher, that's when the nerves are and learning to control that.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing here.
Learning. I'm still learning that.
Me too. And so to watch Brock settle, take his time, try to control those nerves at 12 and then here at 13. And, the next day or 2 days later, Brock shoots a 191-inch buck like a cold stone killer, right? Well, could he have done that if he didn't shoot the bull last year and he didn't shoot the bull a couple days earlier?
Right.
Because that was a intense situation on this big buck. You get better by experience, and unfortunately, things don't always go right.
Right.
When you're trying to manage those nerves. And so to criticize to me is short-sighted.
Well, and you think about it like you and I didn't grow up learning these things with a camera over our shoulder.
No.
Thank goodness. Right. That's a whole nother amount of pressure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Brock or Brett, they've been Carson, Ben said Carson, they're charging through the mountains with working hard all week, and they get it all documented.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're all the pressures that we had, plus everybody else is going to be able to see what you did.
Yeah.
So.
And so, we back out, we get permission. And thankfully he did grant permission. I have to say, I really am glad he did. He didn't have to. I feel like he should, but I also realize he didn't have to.
Yeah, he's got the right not to.
And
I appreciate it.
And I appreciate it. Yeah, extremely grateful that he allowed it. We went up there,
So
And
6 hours had transpired since you had seen him on his feet.
Yep.
By the time we got back.
And
it was a 2 mile pack out, hour drive back to get phone service. Anyway.
we got there and he was dead.
He's dead. Didn't have to put him down or anything. He died right there where you last. In fact, so your lack of being able to see him at 10 yards the first time, this time Brian spots an antler tine sticking up through the densest jungle. I don't know how you ever spotted that, but
That was such a relief. I saw, and then I'm like, okay, we can shoot him again if he's not down.
oh,
And we went over there, and he was dead.
yeah, he was dead.
But there was evidence all around that, and the meat was fresh because
Yeah, he was real pliable, warm,
he hadn't died. Maybe he died within the hour. Maybe.
probably. I mean, really, you shoot an elk and get to an hour later. Usually, I don't know what the timeline is. They're starting to get stiff fairly quick.
Yep.
This bull wasn't stiff at all, so he had just died.
And you think about that ethically, morally, you know, and you have to live with that suffering, and that's a long time. And he didn't die well.
No.
He didn't die well, and
It was just shy of 24 hours since we'd shot him. It was maybe an hour shy of that, 23 hours after we'd shot him. We found him dead.
And you can smell it. You could see it, you know.
From that shot that hit him. Yeah, it was that third shot, the one that dropped him, hit him high and back, kind of where he shot the bull last year, but he was quartering.
Yeah.
We can only assume it just shocked his nervous. It was high in those tenderloins. The tenderloins were blown up. The top of the gut was blown up.
Mm-hmm.
We're assuming it just shocked that nervous system, which dropped him. Made his back end not work very good as he started running, but then he gained his back end and took off. And the whole way up that hill, his tracks were walking. They looked very normal. You know, he had 3-4 inches of snow.
And it sucks because we could have killed him 6 hours earlier.
Yeah.
He's just right there to kill. But
Yeah.
you'd be breaking the law.
Yeah.
And from my position, you know, running Gritty podcast and hunting, and dude, I would get crucified
Yeah.
if I broke the law. Like, court of public opinion would just,
Right.
people would, that's what they do. And you're employed by Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
you're a state trooper, and you're a fish and wildlife officer. What do you call it down there? Game officer?
Yeah. Fish and Wildlife.
So
Game trooper.
you'd lose your job.
Yep.
There's a lot of consequences
Yeah.
for,
And the reality is, you know, somebody could argue, well, you should have put him down anyway and then backed out and got permission. And maybe, I mean, morally, I could probably agree with you, but these are all things you got to consider, you know. I mean, it's this multi-headed beast here that.
well, it's like Ranella, you know, I mean, you know, put that fawn out of its misery, but you'd be using your tag.
Yeah.
There'd be no meat for your freezer. You'd be using it, and if it's a rare tag,
Yeah.
you know, you'd be using it on a fawn to put it out of its misery. And at the end of the day, I mean, nature's savage,
Yeah, for sure.
and you don't want to see that. So it just makes you think, man.
Yeah, it makes you think. It was a good learning experience, though, and it turned out well because that meat was good. It got that.
That's
whole
the
elk got
upside,
put to
right?
use.
The silver
Yeah.
lining is the meat
Yeah.
is perfect.
With the exception of the tenderloins, which were blown up and had guts all over them.
Yeah.
But got the rest of that meat and
Brock skinned
great
and
pack out. Yeah.
and got in there.
That's right.
So we pack him out and
Pack half of them out.
half of 'em out.
That night. Got out late again. It was 2 late nights in a row.
and this is the cool part of the hunt right here. So we're basically in the same spot every day throughout this hunt.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3 days in a row. People had stopped by and seen us unload and go, God, you guys
And
are
glass
here
from the
every
same
day."
spot every day. Because we shot the bulls on the first evening, and then we were kind of in and out packing
Monday,
the whole time. So we were
Tuesday.
in, out, in, out, in, out. And so we ended up being there a lot. And we're going in for Brock's last load
Right. That'd be Wednesday morning.
of his elk. but the meat's hanging in the tree, antlers. It's frozen.
Freezing at night. It's like single digits at night.
Yep. So we decide Wednesday morning we can take our time to get in there to get the meat out. We don't want to blow a morning hunt, and Brock has a tag, and this is a draw unit. It's not a lot of points, but it's a draw. And we're glassing all morning, and Brock's sitting there, and we're freezing on this like we do every morning. We're all frozen, cold, freezing. Yeah. And Brock's like, "Can we start a fire?" And you're like, "We're looking for deer," and
I said, "If you can get it going, you go for it."
That's right. So, Brock, what'd you do?
I used one of our fire starter cotton ball things, and I lit it on fire, and I put some grass stuff on it, and then took forever, and then he finally came and helped me a little bit.
We had a lot of smoke and brief flame going on for a while.
He got it going.
Yeah, he got it going.
And it burned right out.
It burned right out.
But why did it burn out?
I didn't put wood on it very much.
He got a little anxious and lit the fire before he went and found the kindling and the tinder and some wood. And I saw him doing it. I just, it's better for him to learn this on his own.
Then you got a whole stack of wood and little tin, like all various sizes, set that aside and started over. Meantime, we're glassing up $2.
It's the first. That's our first real. I mean, we'd seen some dinkers up till then.
Little babies.
Dinkers, one little 4-point, a couple forked horns, and we finally find a decent buck while Brock's doing this fire thing. And it's what? It's a mile and a half away, a mile away.
Just up the hill, but yeah, it's a ways.
Because it was in that second basin over there.
But rutting
a doe, in an aspen patch. Would not come out in the open. Nice frame buck, 22, 24 wide, tall, boxy.
And then he just didn't have deep forks.
Yeah,
and then,
decent back, little tiny pincher front.
But, I mean, for my part, I was like, that's a shooter.
I was right. And this is Wednesday, right?
Right.
We only got Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I was thinking, I always leave these decisions up to my kids when they have a tag. They can shoot. When my oldest daughter drew an Arizona bull tag when she was 14, I went there and said, if you want to shoot a spike opening morning, you shoot a spike. You want to hold out till the end and come home empty, no big deal. I don't care. Whatever you want to do, you can shoot.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, Brock's going to like this buck.
I liked the buck.
I liked him. He was good looking. He wasn't a scoring buck.
And there was another one over there getting run off, and I was like, I'd shoot that one.
Yeah.
And so
I got the phone scope on him so Brock could see. Brock, come take a look. But I think he asked me one question. Is it bigger than Brett's? I said, nope. He goes, not interested. Brotherly competition.
That's right. And so he went back to the fire, and I was watching him make the fire. You were watching him, and I was like, man, he's close, but he's missing some key, parts, and we're both frozen. I'm ready for the fire. So Brock, we get over there. So observing the successful fire, what would you say was a key element you were missing in the first fire?
Wood.
Fuel.
What I love about Brock is he's a man of many words. But it's funny, he'll get talking when there's no camera or when,
Yeah.
But what else?
I don't know.
Did a lot of blowing.
Oh, that's right. I heard you guys. I didn't even watch, but I could hear you back there teaching them how to blow in the fire.
Yeah, a lot of oxygen.
Yeah.
Fires need 3 things.
Oxygen, fuel, and I just learned this in shop. I should know. But I can't. Heat.
That'll work for me.
That'll work.
Yeah. Yeah, you need, especially that oxygen, you got to get it.
Burning hot.
Yeah, you got to get it going hot, and then it'll take care of itself. But when it's,
I
when
heard
it's a
you
baby,
over there telling them low and slow or something. Long and slow instead of big.
He would, like you're blowing out candles. I'm like, you just smushed our fire. Slow it down, bro.
I could hear all this. I'm like 10 yards away glassing.
Yeah. But he got it raging, and then he pulled out his Pop-Tarts, and burnt those.
Yeah.
I noticed Brock doesn't have a lot of patience over the fire. If it's marshmallows or Pop-Tarts, he's going to burn it and eat it right away. I feel like Brett was much more of a
like
methodical,
Yeah.
like brown it, and Brock's like, dude, burn is great.
Yeah. That's why Brett's a quarterback and Brock's a bruising fullback. Like, they're very different that way.
We're probably there till noon.
I think it was like 11:30, 12.
And
decided to call it a day.
decided to go
get the elk.
Yep. It's warm. It's hot. But we were seeing
relatively,
yeah. True. It's the sun is out.
Sun is out. It's still below freezing.
Still cold, but the sun is out, and that sun was glorious. But we were seeing, it's funny because a lot of guys will show up in the morning, hunt the morning, and then they'll hike out around 10 or something and go back to camp, and then they'll get ready to come back out in the evening.
We see that, or we see guys that stick it out till about 3 and then turn around and leave right before it's like prime time.
And I think there's two things going on there. You got guys that they don't want to stick it out all day. Like they love the afternoon, lunch, nap, hanging out, and I don't begrudge them any of that.
That's what you want.
And then they come back in the evening. See a lot of that. And then the guy that leaves at 3, that's a dude who is afraid to be in there after dark.
That's right.
He doesn't like the approaching darkness and wants to be back at the truck.
Or at least wants to be closer. Wants to work his way, convince himself to work his way closer to the truck by dark.
Yep. I think that's a comfort thing.
Yeah.
A
lot of guys are like that.
And so, but the thing that we observe is, the mornings, there's a lot of running around and, early light activity. And then those deer bed as the sun's really getting up. And that's when everybody's like, well, all the deer are bedded, so it's time to go. There's no more movement, and they leave. And dude, it's uncanny. It's like an hour and a half after that, animals get up and start walking everywhere.
We count on it, bank on it.
The afternoon is the money time.
Yeah, especially this late season hunts.
There's so much less pressure in the afternoon. So we and the evenings are good too, right at dark. But like you said, there's a lot of guys who they leave before dark, so they miss that because you'd be hiking out in the dark. So we decided to pack up and go
get the elk. We had
go get the
elk to get.
So, but you're never done hunting. I mean, Brock has this limited entry tag, and we're looking for a buck. So we're hiking along the base, and we're spotting deer here and there through the binos. Like, oh, there's a deer, but nothing with antlers. And we stop, and we're ditching gear.
We're going to ditch gear because we had that straight up hill to get the elk. We thought no sense packing all our spotters and tripods up to the top just to grab the elk and turn around and hike right back down.
Exactly. So while we're unpacking packs and stuff, I'm still like scanning all the horizons and looking.
By the way, I wasn't. I was just unpacking.
I'm trying to pull a rabbit out of the hat here. And I see this doe on the skyline. I'm like, hey, there's doe. Look at the skyline. Get down. So we all duck. We all get down on our knees and because we're in the wide open.
Yeah, sage
flat. And so we get down and we're looking up, and I got the binos up, and then, dude, bomber stud buck of a lifetime.
And I'm digging for my spot scope that I just stashed in the sagebrush and hid.
And I'm like, huge deer, big buck. And oh, that's a good buck.
And by the way, a big buck to us could be 160.
Totally.
I don't know what you're saying, right? I just know that's you're seeing a nice one.
And then I'm talking to you guys, and I put my binos back up, and I'm looking at him from the side pretty much the whole time. When he first came over, came over straight, and then he turned broadside. So when I put the binos up the second time, I'm looking at him broadside, and I'm like, is that the same deer we saw a mile and a half away with those? Because
4-point
from the side, I didn't quite. I was like, and you're like,
well, yeah, he's just cresting over,
and you're like,
look.
Oh no!
Well, I got my spotter out and instantly knew. I'm like, oh, that's a giant. That's a big buck.
And he skylined so awesome. And you have the You have
Yeah,
your
my
phone scope.
I threw my phone scope on there to
Such cool
get a little
footage.
video of him.
Because the blue sky's right behind him. It's sunny, bright,
Yeah.
and he's got these stickers.
You noticed
coming
that?
off.
I didn't notice that. You called that
I was
out.
like, holy cow. And you're like, Brock, that's your buck right there. That's your buck.
this decision's up to you, but we're shooting that one. But he's like 1,200 yards away, right?
Right.
Isn't that about what he was?
Yep.
Yeah.
Again. And they're feeding over the top. They're actually moving pretty quick.
Yeah, they're feeding, but they're moving.
But it's 12:30 in the afternoon or something in broad daylight.
And they are wide.
In the
There's
wide
nothing
open.
up there.
The first thing I do, because now I'm accustomed to these type of hunts, is scan my surroundings to see if there's
Where's our
anything,
competition?
if there's anybody in orange that is also seeing them. I think we were alone that day. Like literally, it was Wednesday midweek. Not
3
a hunter.
days in a row in the same base, and I think everybody thought we had blown that
Shooting
base
it out,
right?
hiking up and down,
Right.
skinning
Packing
game. Yeah,
it, listening to
music.
music, packing it out. What was that? I keep forgetting the name of that show that you guys were.
We watched Pitch Perfect. And,
So that music and Greatest Showman.
Greatest Showman.
Yeah, Brock was rocking out to the Greatest
That's right.
Showman.
So we're sitting there looking at that buck on that hill, and so we don't waste any time. Me and Brock ditch backpacks,
Yeah, I grabbed mine just so we'd have at least a kill kit and some stuff with us.
and then we started running.
Yeah, it was straight up. Luckily there was a nice knob between us, and I think right then I looked at the top of that knob had 2 trees. I said, if we can get to those trees, we should be within range.
Yep.
But it was straight up.
So we run up to the top. It took us a while,
Brian
and
had to wait for us a couple times.
mostly your dad, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
whole time.
As we're approaching, it looks like we're going to be on the perfect
Yeah.
shooting knob, and they're going to be what? What did you think?
Well, so the top of that knob was one thing. We got about halfway up, I think, when you peeked over first, and you saw the smaller buck and the other does that were with them.
Yep.
And they were like 500-ish.
Yeah.
And I think you said, can you shoot them from there? And I said, we could, but I'd rather not.
Yeah.
Let's get closer. So then we went, 3/4 of the way up?
Yeah, and this is a question. Like, there was a rise,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at it at the terrain, and I'm like, okay, if you go to the right and side hill around the front of the hill, you're going to see the deer right away. They're going to be within view, but you're going to be on a side hill in this brush.
Trying to shoot cross canyon on a side
On a slope.
Yeah, tough. Thick brush, tall brush. What's waist to shoulder brush?
Yeah, but I felt like it was more sparse on that
Yeah,
side
right.
than it was on the top. The top looked like what I was hunting moose,
Yeah.
in Canada. So I'm like, if we go up to the top, I was thinking, where can you shoot from? Plus, the top is so thick, you're gonna make a lot of noise.
Yeah.
Where if you just go 10 yards around the side, you're right there.
Yeah.
So we're having this debate, like, what do we do? And I'm like, and you're like, I think we should go to the top. I'm like, okay.
Well, I knew he could shoot at that range, but I didn't want to have to if
Yeah.
we could get closer.
So we go to the top, we get there, and we're doing good.
Oh yeah, we'd seen the smaller 4-point, which was still the second biggest buck we'd seen on this hunt, except for this one.
And we were thinking he was around 300 yards or something, I think, at that point.
Yeah. Well, I saw him.
That's
I
what
saw him
I was
moving
thinking
up,
about,
yeah.
300 yards.
Yeah.
And so, you're really good about making sure your gun safety is paramount. We're always talking about it.
Yeah.
Brock, what are some of the things you've learned about gun safety?
That my dad is very cautious about not pointing it even close to anyone. And he says there's a laser going out of it that'll kill anyone it touches.
Right. So don't ever point at anyone. Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And so Brock pays attention to all those cues. It seems to be the forefront of his mind. You have his gun safety as paramount. You're making sure that the muzzle's pointed in the safe direction. You're making sure that there's no bullet in the chamber even.
Yeah, I don't carry bullets in the chamber.
And
We didn't have one in the chamber yet during all this, even though we were technically within kind of long range. But
yep. And so now it's time to load a bullet. And so Brock, jacks a shell, puts it in, and then
Gets a lecture from Dad for the 1000th time.
Yep, total. Every time a bullet goes in, there's a lecture. And so he's got the gun pointed in a safe direction up in the air, and you guys start sneaking forward.
Took my backpack off. I told him I was going to lay it down if we could get,
Yep.
Gave him this big talk, and I think.
And I was looking at the thing going, okay, you have to make it to this little hole ahead of us, which is about 10 yards.
Yeah, there was a little hole through the brush we could sneak through.
And if you went through that, you could lay prone and shoot this buck. But right now, you're head high in brush, neck high.
Yeah.
So you turn and start to walk, and
I took one step,
and that buck spots you.
That's on camera.
And Brock took a step too, and the gun was pointed in a safe direction. But it was about a foot over your head.
Yeah, because I'm higher on the hill and I'm bent over. Brock's behind me, standing up, but he's lower in elevation, so he's.
And the gun has to be in a safe place, and and pointing it forward or at the ground or to the side, it's too thick. And so that buck, though, I think he saw Brock's rifle, but
I thought because I had the sun just shining right out. Either way, he spotted movement. We didn't know that's where. Keep in mind, we'd only seen the smaller buck since we got up there. And as I looked through that hole in the brush, that big buck is staring right at me.
He just pinned you.
Just pinned me.
We were there for how long, Brock?
10 minutes.
2 hours, it felt like.
Yeah, pretty much.
A long time. You're frozen, and Brock's frozen, and you're like, don't move. And he is full alert.
Yeah. And I'm leaning over. I'm bent over on my backpack. My backpack's standing up like this, and I'm bent over holding onto my pack.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at my eye level. I'm as low as you can get to still see the buck. If I would have dropped any lower, so in other words, there was no shooting. Like kneeling would have been too low to the ground to shoot.
Right.
So you had to have been like a semi-crouch or standing to be able to shoot over this brush.
Brock's trying to hold still, but he's wiggling all over because you're like, freeze, Brock.
Yeah, their definition of freeze and mine are two very different things.
Well, and when you said to freeze, he's in the wrong position to freeze from. So now he's awkward and he's trying not to fall over. I'm like, try to get more comfortable, Brock, because you
move slowly.
So you're when I say slow, so slow, it's like you're not moving.
That's what I said.
And so Brock moves slow, so slow he's not moving, and we start having a debate on how to shoot. And you're like,
how to get out of this predicament because this buck is not going to hold.
And so you're like, can you get around? I'm looking around because I'm not visible to the buck, and I'm exploring the background here. I'm like, there's no options.
I think I said, could you take Brock and I'll stay here, and can you go up to the hill and try to get a shot?
And circle around
and miss this.
And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I went around the edge, and I looked, and there's nothing better over there. And I went around the other side, and there's nothing better. And I'm like, well, can't he just go 10 yards further? And you're like, no, this buck is locked on.
We can't go 2 feet. This buck's going to blow.
He's going to blow. And I'm like, seriously? And finally, I'm like, dude, let me look. And so I lean out and I look and I see that buck boom, just locked. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's not lying.
And at that point I thought, we might blow this.
I know.
This is a giant buck and we might blow
I was thinking, dang it, this is the sort of thing that happens you see these 200-inch bucks and
that's why you don't kill them.
You don't kill them because this. And I'm thinking, how can you blow it with a rifle?
Yeah.
And
we were about ready to.
Yet you can,
Well, I think I asked you, I said, do you think he could shoot off the top of my trekking pole, which would be like a standing, which is supported, but at 270 yards, that's a pretty wiggly support.
I did not.
There's guys that could do it, but.
Yeah. And I watched Brock earlier set it on there and get behind there, and I'm like, that's too.
Yeah, you said, I don't think so. I don't think he could make it.
And so I was thinking he might just have to risk blowing it and crawl up there, and you're like, can he shoot off my back? And I was like, no, he can't shoot off your back.
I think he said, would that work? I don't know. Let's try it. Because I'm bent over like this, at the waist, like a table.
Like a table. And I'm like, and so we argue about that. I'm like, no, that's out of the question. And you're like, dude. And when I saw the buck locked on, I was like, okay, you're right. He's going to blow. He's going to book. And the other deer are just feeding. They're so chill. He knows. Yeah. He's that big and that old for a reason,
Yeah, something moved up there.
And later he's been shot before, right above the spine, right in the middle of the back.
Yeah.
Just missed the spine bone, went through all the meat and the flesh, through and through hole, lots of pus, probably from the week or two before.
2 weeks before, yeah.
2 weeks before, probably 2 weeks.
We didn't know any of this at the time.
No, but I mean, just goes to show, these deer.
Yeah.
They know the game,
Yeah.
And so
been running the gauntlet a long time.
At that point, I was like, well, let me see the gun. Cause I was like, well, let me put it on your shoulder across your back and see how this feels.
Yeah.
And I put it up there and trained it on the buck. And I was like, wow, this is surprisingly steady and comfortable.
I've got,
I'm a
nerves of
rock.
steel.
Yeah.
Like a rock.
And so I was like, I got really optimistic really fast. I was like, oh, I think you could shoot from here actually. So I settled it on there.
The buck and everything. He said, Brock, it's pointing right at it.
Yeah. And so Brock got behind it. He had trouble finding it, and I got behind it and was like, nope, there it is right there.
Backed out the power a little
Backed
bit.
it out. Put him on the buck. He was on it right away, and then zoomed it in. And then I threw the camera on the ground so I could get my binos up and keep an eye on.
I asked Brock, I said, are you steady? He's like, I'm steady.
Yeah.
I was like,
really?
All right, let's try
I know.
this.
He's like, I expect, because Brock will tell you the truth.
Yeah.
He's like, no.
Yeah.
You're like, are you steady? No. You're like, oh,
it's
dang.
just a giant buck getting ready to bolt.
And you're like, are you steady? He's like, yes.
He goes, yeah.
Oh, okay. And you said, just shoot whenever you're ready.
I said, go ahead. And I knew I couldn't watch. I had to plug my
your
ear,
ear.
look down.
So you're ducking down. I'm watching
Barrel's
through the
way over my
binos.
back, but
And I'm like, the buck is a stud. And then just before he shoots, I'm like, wait. You're on the right buck, right? Like, 'cause I didn't want him to shoot the little one, and it was right over there. So I want to make sure he was on the right deer. And he's like, yeah, I'm on the right deer.
Yeah, he's looking right at us.
Yep.
That's what he said, I think.
He slowly squeezed one off, and the buck donkey kicked, and I was like,
and I could just hear smack,
and this is 270 yards?
270, yeah.
270. And he hit this buck, and it's going down.
Donkey kicks, makes
Yep.
it, what, 10 yards?
So we're, as usual, we're loading a shell, and we're running, you never know where you hit and how good it hit. And so we get back up there, and you go maybe 10 yards closer. And in the video, you'll see Anthony's holding on to the rifle muzzle, making sure it's pointed straight up in the air, not at the back of you.
Because I knew he put another round in. I told him, is it unsafe? Yeah. And then I just thought, I can't have that gun behind my head. So I just grabbed it and held it up.
Yep. And, it's smart because in that moment,
too much excitement.
Too much, and you're in front of the gun.
Yeah.
He trips or whatever. So you've got a hold of that gun, pointed up, and it looks kind of awkward, but it's actually pretty safe.
Yeah.
And you guys are walking 10 yards, maybe closer, because you needed to do that in order
to get out of the brush.
Yep, to get a better angle. And then again, you bent over, and Brock,
because the buck made it back to its feet. Stood up broadside again.
And so Brock, your second shot, first of all, I want to hear about the first shot. When you got on it behind your dad, did it feel comfortable?
It was a little weird because my legs are kind of bent, but not completely bent, but not straight. So it was like at an awkward angle.
Yeah, kind of semi-crouched.
Yeah, you could see that in the video. But you squeezed off a great shot. So did it feel good?
Yeah.
So you hit that buck and you run up, and the second shot, now your dad's super jacked. He was jacked before, but now he's really and it's funny on the video, you're like, shoot him.
It's over my shoulder this time.
He's over your shoulder. Same thing, you're aiming. And, to Brock's credit, he ignored you.
Yeah. I'm the excitable one. Brock's pretty calm.
He totally ignored you and was like, he shot when he was ready to shoot.
Yeah.
Not before.
Yeah.
And on that shot, you waylaid him.
Oh,
I mean, it's like a perfect shot. And you could hear it just go whack. And I saw him drop.
Yeah.
And on that shot, same thing. Did it feel good? Or, I mean, because
you were hitting him? Or did you? Or just because of our reaction?
Yeah, probably just your reaction.
Yeah. So the buck went downhill. He started tumbling. It was so steep. Kind of tumbled, crawled.
Yeah.
Another 10 yards, 20 yards. Then stopped. And then had his head up bedded. And then we were able to find a hole.
And at first, we were celebrating because we thought it was done.
Yeah.
It dropped. And that
That's right,
second
that's
shot,
right.
I knew
You said, "Hey, he's moving
down,
again.
he's
moving
down,
again."
he's down. But then a minute later or so, we saw him move again. I'm like, oh, he's up, he's up.
Never made it to his feet, but he kind of was so steep, you know.
Yep. And then he was looking around all alert, and I'm like, you asked, should we shoot him again? And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
I knew he was dead. So are we just putting too many holes in him? But you're like, no, shoot him again. His head was up.
And
which is the right call.
I feel like you don't want to waste meat, right? And a bullet isn't like an arrow.
Yeah.
It just can wreck meat. So, but at the same time, you want to make sure you get the deer. And so I'm like, no, just shoot him again. And this time, though, take your time. So Brock set up once.
Prone.
Kind of. And didn't shoot.
Yeah.
And why didn't you shoot?
Because I couldn't find him because we were looking at the wrong bush, so we had to move to the left to find the right bush that he was at.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
We got a little better height on the bipod and took our time. We knew he wasn't going anywhere then. He just was bedded there.
And then you aimed at him. And what happened?
I shot him in the neck.
Yep. And dropped him.
And about right where his skull meets his neck.
Boom. Just hit the ground. That's pretty much what you could see. At that point, it was like, wow, it's worked, right? Like, and we talked about this later. Like, okay, in hunting, you practice in a prone with a sandbag or on a bench rest, and you do all this stuff, right? And then in a hunting scenario, it's never like that.
You got to make things work.
And this comes into the question, like, especially on YouTube, people are probably watch some of this and go, I can't believe you did that. It's not ethical. That's not a good enough shot. Like shooting off of your back. But yet he hit it all 3 times.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
So
270 down to probably 250 the last shot. Yeah.
So that's 3 for 3. On a, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just wonder, like, what are your thoughts on that? Because we talked about this a little bit the next day. You'd like to set up the bipod. You'd like to lay prone. You'd like to have this perfect scenario.
Rest. Yeah.
But you're making do with the situation, improvising.
Yeah.
And I truly believe in hunting. That's the difference between the guys that come home with stuff and the guys that don't on a regular basis.
It's funny because on that we drove separately, right? Mm-hmm. Out there, and so on our way home, we weren't together, and I was thinking about this very concept, and I was thinking back to when I was probably, I don't know, I was maybe 16, 17, bow hunting blacktails back where we were from, the Oregon City area, and I remember back then it was all like still hunting, just moving slow through the woods. I saw way more bucks than I ever shot, But I remember the first decent blacktail I killed, he popped out in front of me on the trail, and it was, 80, 90 yards away. And, back then I'm bow hunting, I probably was good out to 30 or 40, Mm-hmm. And he popped on this little road that I was still hunting down, and he didn't know I was there. And I was thinking, how am I going to get close to this buck? And that was before YouTube, and you had a few hunting magazines. I happened to have bought a grunt call. I didn't know anything about it. Yeah. And I'm sitting here, this probably took 15 seconds. And I'm thinking, how am I going to close the distance? And just on a whim, pulled it out of who knows where. I put that grunt call in my mouth. I got on my hands and knees and started grunting and walking to that buck on my hands and knees. And that buck just looked at me and let me grunt right up to 30 yards of that thing. And I pulled up and shot him. But, sometimes you got to just make stuff up, right? You got to just, how am I going to get this shot off? Mm-hmm. Make it happen. That was kind of like this, I don't know, throw it over my back. Let's see if that's steady. Or how many times have you thrown your bow over your head? You got a bull screaming and cows in the way. I don't know. Throw your bow over your head and walk at it and bugle.
I learned that from you.
Yeah, and how many times does it work?
Like right? Twice. Like
somebody on a hillside would go, what a bunch of idiots. What are they thinking,
No, I've learned that sometimes you just get creative or crazy and it works.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do feel like that's a difference. And at what point is it wrong? Yeah,
a lot of times you only know that after the fact. When it didn't work, or something didn't work out, and you learn from that, hopefully. And
honestly, I wasn't sure you bending over if that was going to give a stable enough platform for someone to get on, get comfortable, and take a shot. Didn't know how steady the person underneath could be, because it's one thing for the shooter to hold the gun steady, and then it's the platform should be steady, right? So
I remember telling him, I said, hold on, you got to let me take a breath and let it out, and then you can take yours and let it out. So
exactly. And you timed that,
Yeah.
and you did that exactly right. And what I was surprised with was when I put the gun up before Brock got on it just to test it. I was sort of being the tester before we committed to this, and I was like, no, it's actually good. Brock, get up there.
Yeah, we weren't going to do it if it wasn't steady.
No.
It was just a thought. Let's try it and see if it's steady. But
And I've heard of people doing this,
Yeah,
right? Kneeling down and stuff like that, and having someone shoot right off their shoulder and
Right.
use another human as a bench rest.
Yeah.
I've heard of that. I've never tried it.
Right.
And
I've done it in training. I've done it, back when I worked on it, for a city department, worked on a TAC team. We've done that.
Really?
Yeah. Not like this, not over a backpack, but
Well, it worked.
it worked.
It worked. Brock, what do you think of this deer?
At first, I didn't know how big of a deal it was, but then when a lot of people came to camp and looked at it,
Word spread like wildfire, huh?
Yeah, we got a photo of there's 30 people that came to admire the deer and take a look at it. And
Yeah.
it's a really neat buck.
Well, we had this funny discussion when we got up to, we were excited, we got some photos, and you said, Anthony, how big is this buck? And I, remembering back to when Ben and I killed my first buck in Colorado, I was a little excited at first, thought that buck might be pushing 180, and the more we worked on him to bone him out, the more I thought, no, he's not. I was just too excited. And it ended up being a 171 buck, I think, is my biggest deer to this day. So you said, how big is this? I'm like, oh, I didn't want to get overexcited, I'm like, I think he's pushing 180. You're like, really? And I'm thinking, yeah, I think he's pushing that, like maybe mid 170s.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in my brain, I'm like, he looks a lot bigger than that to me, but I don't want to get overexcited,
And we try to not get caught up in antlers and inches and things like
It's
that.
not good to be caught up in inches when you don't kill big stuff anyway.
Well, it's really about an experience,
Yeah.
but when you do come on something that's this remarkable and rare,
That's what it boils down to, is rare.
because we have people in our camp that were there. My uncle Kevin was there from High Point Outfitters, and he's been on the podcast a few times. His son Blake, we had John there from High Point. We had a lot of people. My other uncle Russ was there. Uncle Kevin,
Random hunters from Utah
my cousins,
showed up,
people from Utah. Yeah, and so to a man, not a single person in that camp has shot a buck this big before.
Yeah.
And this is Kevin's life.
I think Kevin did. When
Kevin
he was a
has,
teenager.
yeah, when he's 17.
He shot one, and he said, "I've been trying ever since."
I
to
think
shoot
it's
that big again."
198
Yeah.
is his buck. Big
And
Arizona.
he said specifically to this unit, he said, "I've been coming here 20 years to kill that buck." And he goes, "I've seen just about one per hunt, right? He doesn't hunt it every year, but just about once a hunt, he'll see a buck. He goes, I've just never been able to get him killed."
Yeah. So that's where, those inches and stuff, you start to really appreciate. It just helps you understand how old too.
Yeah.
A buck doesn't get this big without a lot of age on it.
Yeah. Well, and I had a discussion just this morning with a good buddy of mine, Damien, who just got some permission for some private land, and he's got a late season muzzler tag, and he could kill a buck like this on there, which would be awesome. I would jump at the chance. But it's one thing to go, kill a buck in somebody's back farm or
Alberta, primitive outfitting.
Well, and I would love it. I'm not down talking it. It would be awesome. But to go out on public ground with, 730 tags and unlimited elk hunters, and to kill, in 4 seasons, and to kill a buck like that where anybody could have run into that buck, and nobody has for years other than second season. Somebody put a little hole through his back.
Mm-hmm.
it just shows you just how rare of an opportunity that was.
And it's hard to know if this buck would have even lived through the season.
I think the game warden made the comment that probably would have been cougar bait.
He probably would have died this
year. The
year.
hole in his back, and we didn't notice at the time, or maybe you did, but when we watched the phone scope video later, he doesn't limp, but you can
see where
really
he's been
bobs
shot
when he walks.
You can see where he's been shot in the back on the skyline.
You can see it. Yeah.
In hindsight, you can see the lump there, and his spine looks sloped in the middle.
Even though it didn't break any bones.
Nope, but when he walked
like teeter-totter.
Teeter-totter. Dun, dun. And you're like, well, he's bobbing his head like a buck that's big and ruddy, but it was too much to the point where it looked like an injury.
Yeah.
And then when we got him open, he had been stabbed in the back leg or shot there.
But remember, it punctured the skin, but it was just bruised underneath the skin.
Yeah, but it could have been healed. I mean,
true.
It was pretty deep.
It could have been a buck. It could have been a fight. He had a cut on his nose, I think.
Yeah.
Just typical
scarred up old
creature,
dude.
Guy's been around the block.
I mean, giant body. When he came on him,
big neck,
just huge body, big neck.
Love the big neck on the mule deer.
No, it's true. I mean, I've been to primitive outfitting a couple times and hunted with Jeff Lander, and Snyder and I went up there. And Snyder killed a 180. I think it was a 186 buck.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Something like that. It looks a lot like this, with his recurve. And man, they're rare. It's rare to be able to do that, but in this area in Alberta, it's very possible. And where we were hunting, it's very not possible.
Yeah.
Like it's just that much harder to do it on a public land hunt.
Yeah.
And so, it's a treat. It's a rare thing. So
I think that's when it finally kicked in with Brock, when all these men for an hour and a half, 2 hours after we got to camp, everybody coming and going, I've been trying to do that my whole life.
Well, and we asked people like Kevin and Blake, they're like, okay, let's guess. So everybody pitched in their guesses on how big this deer is.
I hate to say what I guessed.
And,
I think
we measured it when we were there, Anthony and I.
Kevin goes, I can't wait. I got to measure this buck. Kevin's more into the inches than
he definitely grew up. Like he wants to know how big this deer is. And they spotted it right away and they're like 180s. Right off the bat.
Kevin said 181 or 182, and Blake
he's like
186,
and he's like, could be bigger.
Yeah,
could be bigger. And so we were like, oh, okay, well, he's beautiful nonetheless. I mean, no matter what, he's a smoker. And then everybody in camp brought out the tape. We took everyone's guesses, and it was like, all right, and started adding it up.
186 was the highest guess.
Yeah.
No, 198.
Well, that was after the fact. That's right. John came later and thought for sure this was pushing too big.
Yeah. And so, we measured it with the group there, and it was a huge crowd. And as the tape was calling out the bits, it was like, whoa, that's, because he's 30 inches wide.
Well, everything I gave him when I guessed, and I was trying to guess low, but every measurement he called out was just a little bit bigger than what I'd guessed.
Yeah.
But you add all those up,
I've never had a buck scored before.
Yeah. Oh.
I know, you're like, okay, it's about such and such, and you use that as a reference.
You've seen so many 160 bucks, you kind of know what a 160 buck is.
Yeah, and you have other people there that are far more knowledgeable in that, and kind of guess an age or the genetics of a deer could be really good with a low age. But it's really cool to see, and we measured it out, and we all guessed low.
Yeah. Well, there was like 2 measurements left, and Blake's going, we're low. We're all low. Even I was low. He had the 186. He's like, even I was low.
And what's cool about it is, I wouldn't guess, looking at it, I know it's a big deer.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't guess 192.
191. Yeah.
191. I wouldn't guess that.
Yeah.
And I'm no mule deer aficionado or anything like that.
I wouldn't have either. I was shocked when they thought it was over 180. I was in my fear of becoming overexcited and guessing kind of mid 170s, push 180. I secretly was hoping he would hit 180 because to me, a 180 buck is where a buck is giant in my eyes. That's where a buck's giant.
Well, and then to see, but there's all these little stickers and points and stuff that just add up. Whoa.
Nice.
Rough, guys.
That would have been perfect for this last hunt.
That's right.
I don't even know what to do with my hands right now. That's can't wait to talk to you guys and see it, man. Continue on podcast.
All right.
Yeah, we had
That's awesome.
a little. I know. We have a little visitor coming into the studio. Jordan Harbison, admiring the buck.
Hasn't he been out hunting?
Yeah, Jordan's been
Yeah,
out.
I saw that.
Casey just shot a nice buck, 160s
Oh, I didn't know that.
a couple days ago. So, this buck makes it look small. Because if I had seen this buck, I'm like, whoa, Casey, nice. It's so funny how it's still 160s is an incredible deer. So yeah. So Brock, what's your goal next year?
I don't know.
Did you tell Brett yet?
My dad did.
Yeah.
And what did Brett say?
Nothing really.
Utter silence. I'm sure he's proud of Rock deep down, but utter silence. Like he was just on. I was talking to my wife and she was on speaker.
Yeah.
And Brett was in the background when she finally asked how big it was. Brett didn't say a word.
Brett shot nice
Brett shot
buck.
2 bucks there. He shot like a mid 150s and about a 160 or 150 buck and a 160 buck there.
Yeah.
Last year he shot a real nice tall buck.
Pretty deer. That's one thing to say, like at hunting out west. What is your impression now going out west? And because I remember when we'd backpack in pretty far. We went into Eagle Caps with goats, pack goats, and we went into Eagle Caps with horses and mules, and we've done it on our feet in the Hell's Canyon. We've gone to some remote places that other people won't go.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, when we first started hunting together, I would observe in you is you would run into someone back there and you're like, we gotta go. We gotta leave somewhere else.
Yeah, it'd ruin my day.
It just ruined your whole day. You don't like to hunt around other hunters. You don't like anybody else in the woods with you. But on these type of hunts, look, Brock shot a 191 buck.
Well, Kevin, your Uncle Kevin, has taught me a lot of it because it still drives me nuts, right? And every time, like I was talking to buddies on the way home, and I told them if I'd ever go there and get skunked, I'd probably never go again. Because when I'm there, I'm like, why do I come here? There are people everywhere, but we keep killing good bucks, right? And killing bulls. And your Uncle Kevin has said, Anthony, why do you care that there's people around you? Are you still killing deer? I'm like, yeah. Then why do you care? He's like, I just don't care. I mean, he grew up with it, in Arizona. You're glass with everybody on the same knob, and he just doesn't care. He doesn't let it get to him. And so we talked about this the first day. They're like, this hunt becomes more of a game of who's going to quit first, who's going to leave the field first, who's going to go home, pack up camp, who's not going to
stop
out till
glassing,
dark, who's going to stop glassing, who's going to quit first. There's 100 other people out here with you. Well, there's hundreds of other people out here with you. Who's going to quit first? And who's going to glass all day long and find it's funny because when we get back to camp and all these older guys have been hunting here forever, couldn't believe we killed him at 12:30 or 1 in the afternoon, right? But
And they're like, where was he in the thick aspens?
No, on the wide open. And you made the comment, it's like they don't want to believe that you can kill a buck in the middle of the day because that would force them to change their habits of going back to camp or leaving early. They don't want to believe that you can do that in the middle of the day. Yet, in the 4 years we've been going there, what have we learned? You see them in the middle of the day. You see bucks run does in the middle of the day. That's when we find them, or right at last light, it seems like.
Yep.
So.
They seem to know that the middle of the day is the best time. It's like they're more cautious, I think, at first light and in the evening.
A lot of times, first light, you're seeing them leave the openings. You're thinking, why are they leaving so quick? But they go feed in the thick stuff, then they bed down, and then what do? They come back out.
When everybody's gone back to camp.
And for all we know, I think sometimes we like to picture these deer that they're just so smart and hunter savvy. And maybe they are, right? I don't know what's in a deer's head.
Yep.
But maybe they're just like, hey, we read it all night. We need a break now. We're going to go rest and kind of chew our cud or whatever. And then, hey, I've rested enough. It's cold. I want to get some more calories. I want to go back out and eat. And the bucks follow them or whatever.
Or in this case, this buck could be holed up on private property for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
No pressure, all alone, just chilling. Hot doe comes in, and he's like, whoa. and she starts walking off, and he's going to follow her. And she decides, I'm going to public. There's the spot I like over here in this public. And he just follows along.
Well,
it's like all his senses are different because of the rut.
Well, and how many guys would have seen us there 3 days in a row in this same basin and thought, man, they have blown that out. There's not but we talked about it earlier, like if the buck's not there for 3 days, he doesn't know we've been in there 3 days in a row.
Right.
If that buck had been over on that private property for that whole time, he had no idea what we were doing in that basin 3 days in a row.
No idea there were 2 dead elk right there.
Right.
No.
So.
Yeah. And the other thing, notice with hunters is, we because we find a great spot to glass from and literally stare at everything for 8 hours till we have ocular headaches and our eyeballs are like, we have to switch between binos and spotters because we're getting, headaches, and we're not moving.
No.
We're covering massive tracts of land, and we're watching the Orange Army and other hunters just walk around.
Yeah, getting bored with one spot.
And they're just walking. We watched this dude walk the ridge.
That's right.
And we've been watching groups of does all over. Probably had some good bucks with them.
Yeah.
Just hold up in the timber on the edges, and we're just hoping something shows itself. And we watch. There's like 4 hunters on the ridges above us, and 2 guys. One guy hit the ridge top and just is skylined, and he's just blah 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 walking along the ridge, which on the mountain we're glassing. Now he can see from on top of that ridge, I don't know, a few 100 yards or so.
Not close to what we can.
We can see for miles.
Yeah.
And we're watching him, and we have a group of does we've been keeping eyes on for a while, a couple of small bucks, and they're just chilling in the morning, sun's coming up, and it's good, maybe hour after light, 2 hours. And we see them spook. And they get up and they start running around. You're like, oh man, something's got them, but whatever. 5 minutes later, dude comes just walking up through the brush, and he's like walking, no binos, no looking, gun slung over his shoulder, backpack, just tromping through the woods. Deer were right under him. And then they spook. And then there was some that just refused to leave earlier and then I'm like, dude, he's going to step on him. He doesn't stop. Yeah. He doesn't still hunt. He just tromps some more, and they jump up and run away. They're probably within 100 yards of him, and he never knew they were there.
Yeah.
Never knew there was like 6 deer all around him. And that's how it goes. And that's exactly that was similar. It was a similar area. That's where we saw those running bucks.
Yeah, and it's exact same
spot. Exact same that he charged through. Yeah.
The day before.
So, I feel like the other dude was on the top on a cell phone, spooking deer out of thickets, and we'd see him run out and go over here. And these guys are spooking deer everywhere, and they never know that they did that.
Right.
And I think that's where they don't realize how important glassing is.
Yeah. That's like your Uncle Kevin. Kevin doesn't like to physically get after it like we do, but he's so confident in his glassing spots. He'll just keep going there, just keep glassing all day. He doesn't care if he doesn't see anything today. He just knows through experience, he sits there long enough, he's going to find a buck. And they bring big bucks home every year on this hunt, right? Mm-hmm. Nice buck. So we've learned a lot from him about this type
absolutely.
Of hunt. Because this is not our experience. I mean, we did not grow up hunting this way.
No. I would have done what I did do what those guys did. And it's tempting. It's like, we're sitting here and we aren't seeing anything.
Let's go over there.
Let's just hike through that draw.
Yeah.
It's like, we're much better off staying in our glassing point. And here's the deal where that really pays off too, is a combination of, I think, fitness and the patience in the glassing, because we could see a buck a mile away up on a hill, and we could get there relatively quickly, and we're willing to go there.
Yeah.
I'll see, there's some guys who will glass, and it'll be a mile and a half away, and they're like, "Ah, man, it's a great buck, but it's over there." And they keep looking for something closer.
Yeah.
And so being able to get after it on Brock's deer, it was feeding across the open. Who knows who else might have seen it?
Right.
Broad daylight, middle of the day, skylined on a big, wide open plateau. And then they were heading into the timber, into cover. And it's like we had to get from our position in the valley to the shooting position, and we could have missed them.
Yeah,
they could have gotten by, and but fitness played a role. I mean, we hustled our butts up there, and but I've gotten to the point where, and it never bothered me as much as you, where I'm okay with other hunters.
Yeah.
That first day,
I'm a little uptight.
That first day, we watched these dudes who had llamas and had packed in a camp. Which this is I don't know if they understood the map or you know what I mean. Like people, I don't know how much they study a map before they go into an area. So these guys had some llamas and they're packing in. So they get their llamas set up and they travel miles. How far? 5 miles?
There was from where they ended up, from the trailhead to where they ended up is about 3 to 4, and they started a good 2 miles before the trailhead on foot.
So 5 miles.
Yeah, that's right.
5 or 6.
5 to 6 miles.
So 5 to 6 miles they travel with their llamas, and they have a tent set up in the woods there, and they're all good. And I'm like, okay, that's cool.
Good for them, yeah.
Good for them. But we drove around to the backside and went like 1 mile.
Yeah.
And we were in the same spot.
We were right above
up a nice trail, and it's like you could go in and out every day without having llamas and packing.
So
and
them going 5 miles in just got them a mile from the guys coming from the other way.
Which had 27 hunters on it.
27 hunters on it, yeah.
And so you think you're remote, but you're not.
You just got a lot closer to everybody else.
And so you got to know access points, and you got to look at a map. You can't just go where you think you're remote, and the next thing you know, you're like 100 yards from a highway,
Full confession. The first year I hunted that spot, I did the same thing.
Really?
Remember that? That was that second season hunt. We hiked in there thinking we were getting remote. And when we got there, that's where I killed my buck. I did kill a nice buck in there.
Yeah.
But as soon as I got the crest, it was 5 miles in, and I saw vehicles. I'm like, what? And that's how I learned you got to drive around.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So exactly. Like that's another thing. And then that same llama camp, we watched the dude leave his tent, and there's a good buck, probably 140s down there, rutting some does.
We found first day.
Yep. Yeah. And I liked that buck. He was cool looking, and he hikes up and the deer just left an opening.
They had just left it, and we glassed them up, and they just kind of got in the thick stuff.
Yep. And then he shows up minutes later, and then he sits over the opening.
Well, we can see him look down and see all the tracks. You see him
in
go
the
like
snow.
this, and then he's like, hey, this is a good place to sit. There's deer here.
Fresh snow.
Yeah, fresh snow.
Fresh tracks. So he sits down, and he's there for probably 2 hours.
Yeah, maybe.
2, maybe 3. It's cold.
Yeah, it's freezing. We've been freezing.
But he's set up. You can see his rifle. He's set up. He's got a little foam seat.
Brought a seat. Yeah,
yep. And he's like leaning up, and he's ready to snipe something if it comes back through. But gets cold, gets tired, 3 hours, 2 hours, whatever it was.
4 o'clock. It's dark at 5:36.
Yeah, he's got a couple hours before dark, right? Now's the perfect time. Like now is the go time.
Yeah, now his spot is money.
Gets up, walks away.
Back to camp.
We watch him walk all the way back to his llamas in his camp, like 400, 500 yards away. As soon as he leaves, about, 40 minutes later, buck walks right into the opening and starts hanging out right where he would have been dead.
Yeah.
And the whole time, those deer were right there, right under him, just in the thicket. And he just didn't stay long enough. And so even though there's a lot of hunters out there, I feel that if you're a skilled hunter, you're going to be the one that tags out. You're going to be the one that can really capitalize on that. And not a lot of guys out there are. Yeah. And I'm not judging anyone. If
I've
you're
been that other guy plenty of times.
Yeah. Well, and if you're the guy that wants to go out and just hang out in camp and be with buddies and it's not fun for you to stay out in the middle of the day, and
that's not what you're into it for.
No,
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
Do what you love, and And sometimes that's just it. It's just a chance for a guy to go out, walk about, and hope he
Yeah.
gets lucky, But if you really want to kill something,
Yeah.
That's
just, you're right. It's whatever you're into. Because I haven't been that guy. I'm not wired that way. We sit up on a knob and you've looked at this basin for hours and hours and hours and hours. And all I think is, I bet if I shift over, there's a big bucket. And I'll look there for hours and hours, and then I'll think, oh, I bet if I go back to their spot, there's a big bucket. And I can just think that all day long.
Until dark.
And just think, whatever, there's one that's going to step out, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Day after day. I think that's just the way you're wired.
Yeah.
Just to think, oh, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It makes it worth sitting out there.
Brock, you've been hunting now you've been on a lot of excursions, hunting trips with your dad. What do you think about hunting?
It's a lot of work when you have to hunt with my dad. It's not as easy as some people. It's not as easy as some people get it. But
You probably have friends that have a little easier hunts, huh?
yeah,
Their dads.
A lot more Twinkies and ding dongs in camp, and a lot more
I don't know. We junked them up pretty good this week, though, too. Pop-Tarts. The only time of the year we buy Pop-Tarts, but it's tradition now. They got to have them on every hunt. Yeah, we do work pretty hard. I think sometimes I overwork them.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed with all your kids. Impressed watching Brock. Dude, it's cold in the mornings.
That Kifaru Parka you gave him saved him, though. He was snug as a bug. And I'm freezing. He's cuddled up in his big Kifaru Parka. Just warm.
That whoopee.
Yeah, and the whoopee.
Those are two pieces of kit that are just on those kind of late season hunts. To put the parka on and then to wrap up in the blanket is a game changer. Blocks the wind, insulates. Brock fell asleep.
Yeah, many times.
multiple times.
We were pretty good, really. It's just that when you're inactive for 8-10 hours, it's hard to keep your body heat up.
Yeah.
You can have some really good clothes on, but when you're no activity,
Yep.
you're going to get chilly. Your toes get cold.
And this year I brought the Sitka Windstopper Giant down.
Yeah, the
I forget,
Kelvin.
The big Kelvin.
WS or something.
Yeah.
I was envying that.
That thing is, so I tried that this time. I'm still not sure about it in comparison to the Kifaru Lost Park Parka. But I mean, absolutely cozy warm. It gets compact in your bag. It's light. I mean, I was totally bomber.
You let me try it a couple times. I thought they were fairly equally warm, but the Kifaru one's just a lot less bulky.
Loft.
Yeah. It does it with less bulk. It's a little denser, it feels like. Yours is like, I swear it sticks out from your body 6 inches. It's so puffy.
It's puffy.
But it keeps you warm because of that,
I feel like it breathes better than the Kifaru. Like I can wear it and actually move around when it's really cold. Where with the Kifaru, like literally I'm taking it on and off because it's so warm.
Which, by the way, Brock doesn't ever shed layers. He can hike up the steepest mountain and keep every layer on. And he doesn't care that he's hot. He doesn't care. He just.
I can't do it, dude. I can't do it.
I kept telling him, are you hot? Yeah. Why don't you take that off? No, I'm fine. He just doesn't care.
So, Brock, what is the best part about hunting and what's the worst part?
The best part is probably getting an animal and being successful. And the worst part is probably hiking and packing it out.
Yeah, we
Especially
loaded
the last load.
We loaded Brock up. I mean, what do you weigh, Brock?
I weigh 130.
30.
He's probably carrying.
Probably carrying 70.
Yeah.
75.
Yeah.
And for the first, it was what? We had about a mile and a half to go by the time we had. This is when we have the rest of his elk and the whole deer and all of our gear for the day. We had lots of tripods and optics.
Yeah.
And that first half of that, it was a mile and a half or so of that, the two animals. First half of that, Brock's like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. This is too heavy. Well, the last quarter,
Smoked us.
he smoked it.
Smoked
He
us.
just
I was like,
decided, I'm going to be done with this. And he took off.
You're right. That first mile, I left you guys in the dust
you left
because
us in the dust.
Brock was shuffling his feet.
And I was trying to be patient, not just leave him behind,
Yeah. And then all of a sudden at the halfway point, just lit out. And I'm like, Dang.
Well, we had that one uphill at the end. Remember, I said, Brock, do you think you can do that whole uphill without stopping and without whining?
No, you told me
not
I
one
had
complaint.
to do that.
No, I said, I'm going to do that. Was my goal.
No, you were like, Brock, you can't. You have to go up that hill without stopping
Yeah,
or complaining or moaning.
But I never saw him again.
Yeah.
I mean, he just left us, and I was like, what lit a fire under him? He just marched all the way out, kicked our butts. I think you were sandbagging it the first half, so we wouldn't give you any more weight.
I don't know. Like maybe he just got used to the pain.
I think that's the first time, by the way. He's done a lot of hard pack outs, but that's the first time I've loaded him up. I've always kept his loads fairly manageable, just not wanting to kill him,
Yeah.
And I was worried about
Smart.
this one, to be honest.
Me too. But
he figured out that, let's just get this done with.
wasn't
Good lesson.
Well, the thing is like right after we loaded up the packs and we're all done, he's like, fine.
Yeah.
You and I are like, oh,
Sore,
real stiff. Yeah.
He's got this pack on. He gets back to the truck, and I had hid the keys under the bumper. And he's looking with the pack on. I'm like, dude, take your pack off. He's like, I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, because
Bent over trying to
I thought
find
the
the keys.
tailgate would be locked too, so I was going
that's
to unlock
funny.
the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anthony, what do you think? How do you think, having your kids use a gun and harvest an animal and bring it back, how has hunting shaped them?
Well, it's funny. He says the best thing is killing and the worst thing is the hiking. And I almost think it's the opposite. These kids learning how to work hard, learning how to turn something into food, learning how to be self-sufficient. Like sometimes the harder parts he's seeing now are the parts that I'm glad he's going through. Like he's learning how, well, we've talked about this before too, like with sports and everything. Just because something's hard doesn't mean it's not worth it. Doesn't mean you can't get enjoyment from it. He's up there trudging it. Like, especially remember first day, he's had a cold all week, bad. First day, we're up over 10,000 feet. He's starting to suck wind. We're from 2,000 feet, so I'm sucking wind.
Yeah.
He's sucking wind. It's 30-mile-an-hour winds, and it's snowing, and he's kind of got a little grump on. And I said, dude, you got 3 other guys because of our new friend we met that are doing the same thing you're doing, and we have a smile on our face, and you don't. And I said, all that is up here. You're physically doing everything we're doing.
Yeah.
And yet we've got a smile, and you're a little, granted he was sick and everything. But from then on, he was like, oh, okay, we're doing it anyway. Let's just enjoy it, because he physically can do it. It's just a matter of mentally, where do you put yourself mentally,
Well, I was impressed. I was super impressed with Brock all week. It's not easy. This is like man stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
it's funny because, Jim, that guy we met, just got done guiding in Wyoming for what he said he'd been there since September 6th.
Yep.
He was on his way home and stopped to hunt with his buddies. So he'd been gone a long time. And he said, we climbed that first pass. We hit that 10,000 foot level. And he was like, most of the guys I guide would not have made it this far. And this is 2 hours into the day?
Yeah.
And he's like, most of the guys I guide would not have made it this far. That was a little eye opener for me. Like, oh wow, that's got a lot of guys out there that want to get it done, and yet other things are going to override that desire to get it done.
Yeah.
Like this is too high, too hard, too far.
Brock, you don't seem to get too, like wound up about much. Like you're like pretty even keel and all that. So like, what's your strategy when your dad's freaking out?
I don't know.
Like, how do you, just maintain your chill? He's like a
ignore
dominant dude.
You just ignore me. He's just, he knows I love him. I'm just a little intense, huh?
Yeah.
He just like,
A little, well.
And a little,
Maybe a
like,
little more.
obsessive compulsive. Like, we were in the cabin, we're getting ready to leave, and I'm like, dude, your dad drives me nuts the way he packs everything. Like, he's
Cleaning
washing.
everything.
I'm like, I've just loaded everything in. I'll deal with it later. And he's like, I've learned. You just have to pack it perfectly. Otherwise, he'll unpack it and repack it, and we'll just be here longer. And Ben's the same way. You see your dad, like, he'll be skinning an animal, and he'll be taking a piece of meat, and then he'll like, there's a little piece that he just doesn't like right there. Let's cut that off. And then, no, cut that off too. No, wait, cut that off. It's like, dude, cut it off later. Like, But yeah, you and Ben get a little persnickety about stuff.
Ben and I are both that way.
But Brock just rolled with it. And what I was really impressed with was when those shots came up, you're like, you're intense. And you're like, come on, Brock, do this. And he's super calm.
Yeah, Brock.
He settles that crosshair, and he doesn't shoot until he's ready to shoot.
Yeah.
And if he can't find the animal or he just is like, I don't see it, And
he doesn't match when I ramp up, he doesn't
match it.
No.
He's just like,
he's like that in football and baseball too.
Because he yells during football the whole time.
He thinks yelling, it's speaking loudly so he can hear me.
It's urgency.
That's right.
It's not lack of control.
No, absolutely not.
No.
But he never lets it get to him. He's a good kid.
Yeah.
He's a good kid. He'll know me out one of these days.
You got 3 kids left at home. 2 have moved out.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
dad life.
Yeah, that's right. It's getting shorter. He's got 6 years before he's out of here.
Yeah, I showed my daughter, Caitlin, she's 15, and showed her a little video of Brock last night. I'm like, here's Brock, and and she's like, she hasn't seen Brock in a while.
Yeah.
I think she actually saw you recently, but it was still like a shocker then. But she's like, I just can't believe how big he is. And then she heard you talk, and she's like, oh, he's got a deep voice. Wow. Like, I just can't even fathom that this is Brock. And
I know we're out there hunting, and there was a few times I look over at him like, is he as tall as I am now? Like, I kind of think we're looking eye to eye.
Yeah.
It's probably not quite there, but it's getting close.
Yep. Well, that's cool. I was glad to spend the week with you guys.
Yeah.
It's great to have elk in the freezer now, and it's great to hunt with Brock.
Yeah, it's fun.
Both of you, it's a pleasure. So, anyway, folks, thanks for listening to the Gritty Podcast. We're going to wrap this up. We'll put some video out as soon as I can, which probably won't be for a couple of months, and show off this hunt. It was great. It's great.
Yeah.
Every year, kind of try. This year I really did a lot of public land, do it yourself, kind of over the counter stuff, archery and this rifle. And dude, it's way harder than hunting landers, primitive or like a draw or like POW. Yeah. It's just it is it's a challenge.
It's a grind.
So anyway,
yeah, cousin Ben and I be hitting it next week, archery.
That's right.
Little deer. It'll be fun. Looking forward to seeing Ben again.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how that turns out because basically you keep doing a lot of bow hiking.
That's right. What are you talking about? I've just been holding out for one of these.
This year you're going to try it's a rut hunt, right?
Yeah, I've tried it a couple
archery
years in a row, spot and stock.
Snow. You're going to try to sit in the blind a little bit.
I'm going to try to do some trail sitting. And some of the spots I've seen for the last 2 years, a buck's just constantly cruising by. I thought, instead of beating my head against the wall, I'm going to
excited to see that.
Sit it out.
Brock, which one's better, pina colada or grape?
Pina colada.
That's your choice, huh?
I
was doing the hot ignite cider.
That's good stuff.
Great on my cold. I had this cold this morning, couldn't hardly talk. This was
your voice is all jacked today.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the Gritty Podcast. And as always, stay gritty.
Stay gritty.
Despite our ever-changing, ever-indignant world with its growing ignorance of and indifference to the ways of the wild, I remain a predator, pitying those who revel in artificiality and synthetic success while regarding me and my kind as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood. I stalk a real world of dark wood and tall grass stirred by a restless wind blowing across sunlit water and beneath star-strewn sky. And on those occasions when I choose to kill, to claim some small part of nature's bounty for my own, I do so by choice, quickly, with the learned efficiency of a skilled hunter. Further, in my heart and mind, I know the truth and make no apologies for my actions or my place in time. Others around me may opt to eat only plants, nuts, and fruits. Still others may employ faceless strangers to procure their meats, their leather, their feathers, and all those niceties and necessities of life. Such is their right, of course, and I wish them well. All I ask in return is no one begrudge me, and all of us who may answer the primordial stirrings within our hunter souls, my right to do some of these things myself. What you just heard is a quote from M.R. James. We truly live in a world that is largely ignorant and indifferent to the ways of the wild. And although some regard us as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood, we have the opportunity to change the way these people view the hunter and the hunt. We can share our experiences and nature's bounty with those who employ these faceless strangers. And by so doing, we make a difference, not just for ourselves, but for the wild animals in the wild places we care so deeply about. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting and the outdoors. Our wild animals and our wild places depend on it.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.